I'm Campbell Brown.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to Des Moines, Manchester, Boulder, Simi Valley, Las Vegas, and all the other previous centers of the political universe, tonight we're all about Milwaukee. Hello, Milwaukee. Good to see you again. And hello, Campbell Brown. Good to see you as well. We're here for the fourth Republican debate at the downtown Milwaukee Theater, which is fitting and proper because this Republican presidential nomination fight has seen its share of theater already. There's your classic rag to riches political story in Marco Rubio, the royal brother Jeb Bush, the soft-spoken storyteller Ben Carson, and, of course, the ever-confident leading man Donald Trump. So here's Act One of our play. We call it Carson versus Trump and also Carson versus the world. Enter the Trump card, stage right, at a mega rally in Springfield, Illinois, last night.
A lot of weird things are happening. This is a strange election, isn't it? Man, you stab somebody, and the newspapers say you didn't do it. And you said, yes, I did it. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. I stabbed him and it hit the belt. And they said you didn't do it. If they said I didn't do it, I'd be so happy. This is the only election in history where you're better off if you stab somebody. What are we coming to?
So that was pretty theatrical. And now we come to Dr. Carson, who today got a chance to speak out in a conversation about education with our friend Campbell Brown, who also asked Dr. Carson about tonight's debate.
You've had a rough couple of days. How are you feeling about tonight?
I'm feeling good about tonight. I love to talk about economic development and the future for our country. So I'm hoping we'll get into some real substantial issues.
Do you think people have moved on from questions around your biography? You know, a lot of people have said, look, this is part of the vetting process. You want to be president, you got to go through it.
Well, I think the public has moved on. The news media will never move on.
That's probably true.
On the right side of the digital divide, you can see Campbell's full interview with Dr. Ben Carson. It's on the website, the74million.org. Here tonight, Dr. Carson is likely going to be more at the center of things than he ever has been before. The big show is hosted by Fox Business Network and the Wall Street Journal. It features 8, down from 10 or 11 of the Republican candidates. There are plenty of themes and motifs to pick apart in this tragedy comedy, but when it comes to Carson and Trump, Campbell, what are you looking at for those two guys tonight? They'll be at the center.
I think Trump would like to continue what he has been doing, attacking Dr. Carson on his biography. But one of the things about tonight that may be interesting is what the moderators have been saying about how they're going to handle this debate. They're responding to the CNBC debate that got highly criticized, and they're talking about being very substantive in their questions, focusing on the economy and monetary policy. That does not necessarily lend itself for an opening for him to go in on the bio stuff.
One of the moderators suggested maybe they will ask about the Carson thing and go off topic a little bit. For me, Trump has been criticized by some for disappearing when topics have become policy-oriented in the past debates. Be interesting to see tonight if he steps up. He's got a tax plan. He's weighed in on some other economic issues like trade. Does he come forward? And Dr. Carson, same thing. He has not done policy in any of these debates. Less to me about the question of whether he's exaggerated or not told the truth about his biography is, does he compete on policy tonight, or does he continue to do the generalities?
And to your point, neither of them has been tested on this in any setting yet. Yeah. I mean, I tried to ask Dr. Carson about education policy today, and he has a lot
He did not pass the test.
Well, he has a philosophy, might be the best way to put it. And that's how they both sort of treat it. They have ideas, but they can't actually articulate how that translates into policy or how you govern around it.
We've seen in some of the past debates, people's attitudes have been, I need to come in and take on Trump. Kasich tried it last debate. You've seen Rand Paul tried it in the first debate. I think tonight people are of the mind to say this is the second to last debate of this year. Can they star on the economy? Can they talk about what they want to talk about, not clash? We'll see.
One quick thing, though, on Carson. It's very hard with his voters, though, to go after him, even on this biography stuff. They're extremely loyal. He's using social media to rally them.
Trump's, I think, the only one who might try it.
And it's dangerous. All right, Act 2 of our play tonight is a classic table turner. We call it The Mentor and the Mentee. Today, the New York Times ran a story about the millions of dollars that Jeb Bush's allies are preparing to spend to bring down his one-time protege, Marco Rubio, who is rising faster than the gold curtain at the Met. To repel the onslaught, Rubio put out a video today that uses his former mentor's words against him. Take a look.
What Marco has, I think, is something that the Republican Party needs to have, which is a hopeful, optimistic message based on our principles. I'm a huge Marco fan. He's probably the most articulate conservative on the scene today, and the fortitude to be a good president.
So proud of his high voltage energy. I'm so proud of his enthusiasm. I'm so proud of his eloquence.
I'm a huge Marco fan.
I'm Marco Rubio, and I approve of this message.
Okay, Mark, so when it comes to Bush versus Rubio, Rubio versus the world, probably, what are your thoughts?
First of all, the pre-paleo Jeb is making me never want to eat a piece of pizza again. Look, Jeb Bush for a while, I think, was hurt by having his brother in his head. Then he had Trump in his head. Now he's had Rubio in his head. That video is devastating because Marco Rubio was Jeb Bush's candidate to be Mitt Romney's running mate. He said he'd be a great president. I think Jeb Bush tonight, people want him to have some revelatory moment. He just has to show people why he thinks he'd be a great president. As for Rubio, he's the best political actor, best political talent on the stage. If he has another good debate tonight, he will just solidify his hold on the establishment.
What's frustrating, I think, about the potential for Bush to go after Rubio is that a lot of people who had supported Bush from the beginning were with him not because he was a Bush, but because they had spent time with him. They knew he was smart about policy issues. They loved the way he thought about things, and they believed if he got elected, he would be a good president for those reasons.
He's got to remind people of that.
He has to. And this should be the perfect opportunity to do that.
The thing about the Rubio and Bush camps is they're both still supremely confident. The Rubio people are supremely confident that he will be the establishment candidate and the nominee, and the Bush people are supremely confident that now, as Rubio gets scrutiny, that he will eventually come down, that he doesn't have a field operation. A lot of confidence, but the momentum is with Rubio. Bush tonight, at a minimum, has to get people to be thinking that he can be a momentum candidate in these last couple months before Iowa.
And I wonder if these attacks that we keep hearing about coming from the Bush campaign are really going to come, or is it more the threat of the attacks?
I hope they come from somewhere else.
And hope they come from somewhere else, and that keeps donors on the side.
All right, finally, Act 3, which is typically the most boring part of any play. That's about the other parade of characters who will be on the stage this evening. So, Campbell, besides the ones we've discussed, Bush, Rubio, Carson, Trump, there are 4 other people up there. Who are you watching?
Cruz. I mean, we're not giving Cruz nearly enough attention in this. I mean, he is smart. He has a plan. He is extremely effective on the debate stage. At the last debate, people were really in awe of his performance. He got a lot of applause. He is sitting there waiting for either Carson or Trump to start hemorrhaging with the expectation that he's going to absorb all of those
And
people.
he has a clear economic philosophy. He's got a new tax plan, which I suspect he'll talk a fair amount about tonight. That leaves Kasich and Fiorina and Rand Paul up there. You watching any of them?
I'm still sort of watching Chris Christie, even though he didn't make it on the stage tonight, because he being sort of not getting the attention maybe he deserves, and he's hanging in there with the hopes that he can, move in if Jeb or Rubio doesn't make it. The other thing Cruz has that we're forgetting about that the other 3 don't is money. He has the donors who are going to be there with him and fund him.
And he's doing well on the internet, and after every debate, they're good at priming the pump. Fiorina and Kasich have both had strong debates. Fiorina in the undercard the first night, Kasich that first Cleveland debate, and of course Fiorina in California. I think both of them tonight need to have a big night to remind people again that they're in the conversation, because now that you have Rubio, Cruz, Trump, and Carson, they are crowding out people. It used to be Trump crowded out everybody. Those 4 now are crowding out a lot of earned coverage.
But those performances didn't translate into big bumps or sustainable bumps in the polls.
And that's what they need. They need sustained bump. And tonight, again, second to last debate before New Year's. It's going to be hard if you don't break through tonight to break through in that last debate, and then we're into the new year.
Okay, we will be watching. We're going to take a brief intermission, but check your playbills, because up next we have the supporting actors for the Carson and Cruz campaigns when we come back in 60 seconds. Welcome back to downtown Milwaukee's theater. Please, no outside food or drink, but we do allow outside surrogates. Joining us now are two of the people who are integral to the success of their high-flying candidates. Rick Tyler, the national spokesman for Ted Cruz's campaign, and Ed Brookover, a senior strategist for Ben Carson. Welcome to you guys.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So a few people are predicting that we're going to see a Carson-Cruz showdown in Iowa, perhaps. Are you planning for that? Both of you expecting that? Thinking about it?
We're planning our campaign in Iowa just like we've been since day one. Recruiting supporters, having Dr. Carson show his values, his personality, identifying our people, try to get them to the caucuses on February 1st. That's been our focus for quite a few months.
Rick, are you expecting a Carson-Cruz final or no?
We're competing very hard in Iowa, and the Carson campaign is competing vigorously as well. So yes, we're going to compete to win in Iowa.
Let me ask you guys something about fundraising. You both have candidates who do very well raising money on the internet and small contributions. I have been surprised that Marco Rubio has not done particularly well there, even as he's risen here. What is it about a candidate that lends itself to being a good small dollar fundraiser?
Well, I think you have to demonstrate grassroots support.
But what does that mean? Why is Marco Rubio not demonstrating grassroots support the way your candidates are? What does it mean?
I would say, speaking for Ted Cruz, he electrifies the crowd. He tells people.
Marco Rubio electrifies crowds. I'm not trying. I don't know what the answer is. It's just everything you said. Electrified crowd, grassroots support. Rubio seems to have that too.
Look,
why doesn't that translate into money?
I would say I don't want to speak for Ed, but we have two candidates that occupy a conservative lane in Iowa that has a broad base appeal and has evangelical voters. And I know from Ted Cruz, they're very excited about the things that he's saying. I think that Marco's been competing more in the establishment lane. And so that's not electrifying any activists right now. So I think we get a lot of energy but I would say that Cruz has probably the only balance. We have grassroots. We also have major donors. I don't think anybody else in the campaign has that. They either have one or the other.
I also think on the grassroots appeal side, there's values, there's who you are, and there's who you're taking on. Those three things have to come together. And then there's an it factor that some candidates have and some don't. The candidates that are attracting more support have something of that it factor.
Well, we call in Houston a little je ne sais quoi.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah, everybody in Houston says that.
The other thing I'd point out is that everybody wants an outsider. Dr. Carson's been very popular. Donald Trump's been very popular, and Cruz is, in my opinion, the original outsider. He's the one person on the stage who's proven that he would go to Washington, do what he said he's going to do, stand up to the establishment, stand up to the Democrats, and stand up to the members of his own party to get what was done. So we have a lot of rhetorical outsiders, but I think we have a proven outsider.
And in today's communications world, people make these judgments for themselves. I mean, they go on Facebook, they go online, they gather information on their own, not waiting for somebody else to tell them who these folks are.
So do you think that's kind of the secret to it? I know he's on Facebook almost every night talking directly to people. I mean, he's kind of bypassing mainstream media, reporters.
Well, we talk to some reporters too. but
I mean, keeping that connection with your supporters, you're using social media.
We're in a whole new world. We say this every 4 years, but it's happened again. And so the sophistication level of communicating with your supporters, the way you gather them, the way you target them, is even beyond 4 years ago. And so using all those tools is a key to successes various people are having as well.
Fourth debate, as you've been around your candidate this week with prep, they looking at it differently? Is it getting to be old hat, or is everyone's even more important? How do they see it? How do you see it?
I don't think it's old hat, right? It's
not yet. Maybe February.
It's narrowed down a little bit, right? Yeah. So that's kind of exciting because will provide our candidates more opportunity to get out their message. And we haven't had two-tier debates, so there's sort of a winnowing event, right? We used to have the Iowa straw poll. That was a winnowing event. Certainly, campaign finance reform, finances are a winnowing event. But this is a winnowing. We'll find out tonight whether someone who's been sort of demoted to the other debate can actually come back or not, or whether this is sort of a new way of narrowing the field.
I also think that these new communications tools, debates are still important. There are other events that are important too. And so, in the past, everything was so centered around these debates, and then all the news would emanate out from them. With these new communications tools to candidates, there are additional ways to promote yourself to win voters. And so while the debates have a high level of importance, they're not the only game in town every week, every month.
What did you do to prep for tonight? What did you focus on? It's too late now. You can go ahead and tell us.
With Dr. Carson, it's been an ongoing. He has ongoing policy advisors he talks to quite a bit, and then he's very much about relaxing and getting comfortable with who he is.
I saw him earlier, and he said he was just going to chill out.
Yeah, that's what he does. I mean, and when he chills out, that's chilling.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the senator's kind of chilling out today too, but we've worked very hard and we've looked at what we've done in the previous debates, and I think people are realizing that Senator Cruz in all the debates, even though there's a lot of mashed potatoes and corn and peas being flown over the stage, that we actually turn in very solid performances every single time. We had an exceptional performance last time. We hope to repeat something like that tonight.
Rick, you're a pretty veteran observer of controversies involving candidates. Has Dr. Carson been helped, hurt, or no effect by the last 6 days of scrutiny of his biography?
I think he's done a good job of explaining through his venues his side of the story. That may not have been true in the past.
Has he been helped or hurt, or neither?
Time will tell.
What's your appraisal today?
Time will tell.
I think we did okay. Yeah. I think we did more than okay.
Ed, as you've talked to him in private, is he at all fazed by this? He had a press conference on Friday night where he was kind of uncharacteristically combative. Has this changed his outlook on the candidacy?
I think he was certainly frustrated by repetitive questions, by questions he thought he'd answered, and by parsing of words beyond what he thought was done to other candidates through the years. And so, but his overall outlook about the process, he knew there would be times when people would jump on him. But, his life story is his life story. Hasn't changed, doesn't change. He may not tell it in ways that fits into a typical Washington speak, but, it seems to be connected.
How important is tonight? Because there's not another debate until December 15th. So you've got this big chunk of time where there's a potential for not a lot of movement. You're not going to get a big moment like this again.
Maybe. There are other ways to campaign other than just debates. Is this a big moment? Of course. But there are more and other ways to communicate your values, your vision, who you are.
I do think it's an important debate, and I think it's in particular because a couple of things. Fox News has a sort of a vested interest in not to repeat what happened at CNBC. I think they'll do that, and I think we'll actually get a substantive debate. I think our candidate will do very well, and you got longer answers and longer rebuttals, so we'll get a lot more substance out there.
Guys, thank you.
Ed and Rick, thank you guys. Appreciate it. We'll have more of the Surrogate Surge coming up right after the break. Team Bush, Team Kasich, and more from here in Milwaukee after this word from our sponsors.
Here now to get in position before all the good seats are taken here for the debate tonight in Milwaukee. Al Cardenas, Republican power surrogate for the campaign of John Ellis, Bush. Tom Rath, a senior advisor to Governor Kasich of Ohio, and Republican strategist Brad Dayspring, who is unaffiliated currently but worked previously as a strategist for Scott Walker's Super PAC. Gentlemen, welcome. I want to talk about a candidate none of you are currently for, Marco Rubio, who you know well. Is he the future of the Republican Party?
Well, he should be one of the ones. I mean, we've got 4 candidates in their 40s for the presidency, and they'll bring their own skill sets and assets, and so that's the future. The question in this campaign is not who's the future, but who now can be the best leader in our country. And in my opinion, with the crisis that we have worldwide and the challenges that we're facing, you can't experiment. You want to have somebody step in who could be the president on day one, and that's why I believe my candidate, and Tom believes his, are the candidates who are ready to be president.
Yeah. Your candidate talks all the time about experience. How does he view Senator Rubio's level of experience?
Well, I don't think he talks much about Senator Rubio. He likes Senator Rubio. He's obviously a thoroughly admirable person. But what John Kasich's been talking a lot about is not just what you want to do, but what have you done? Because what you have done really demonstrates what you can do the next time through. And he's the only guy who's had success, balanced the budget after 9 terms in Congress, turned around a dire economic situation, job situation in Ohio. There's no doubt what you're getting with John Kasich. He's got a track record, he's proven, and I think at the end of the day, voters are going to look for somebody like that. So we have an absolute certainty as to we're not doing sort of on-the-job training for would-be
Right,
president.
these two guys have a vested interest in hoping and advocating the voters don't go for someone who needs on-the-job training. Has Senator Rubio done what he needs to do to convince voters to make that trade-off, or does he have more work to do, do you think?
Well, I think the next 2 months are going to flush that out with voters. I think what these debates have shown is that there's as much about personalities on the line tonight as there is about substance and there is about experience. And balancing those two things are key in these debates. And so when you have a candidate with a lot of experience like a Governor Bush or a Governor Kasich, can they balance that with strong personalities in a way that connects with voters? Can they connect those policies to what voters actually care about? That's a big question that both their candidates have to answer, and certainly Rubio has to answer with the experience part.
Neither Governor Kasich, Governor Bush, I would say, had their best debate at the last debate in Colorado. How hard is it to come back psychologically and say, I know I didn't do well enough last time, I'm going to do better this time?
With all due respect, to steal the phrase, I'm not sure anybody keeps score like that other than those of us who really ought to get another part of our life in here.
But psychologically, if I have a bad day playing basketball the next time out, I'm thinking about it.
Well, but you also then got to say, I know what I do well. I know how I move the ball forward.
Well,
and you go back to your base.
The one bad score was really the score of CNBC, an outfit that was supposed to be the least likely to have created a circus atmosphere. I mean, look, all this is a job interview for the voters to figure out who should lead their country. And when you get into these gotcha questions and questions that I think are out of bounds, it doesn't come out well for anybody. This is a job interview, and no one should forget that. Moderators, it's not about them, it's about the candidates. And so I think Jeb Bush didn't do as well as he can in a circus atmosphere. Hopefully tonight's about substance, and that's a place where he'll do very well.
Yeah, Brad, tonight, if somebody like a Governor Bush, Governor Kasich, is there a way they can have a great debate and dominate, or is it impossible with the other people on the stage to dominate?
Well, I think the more candidates on stage, the tougher it is to dominate, per se. Right. But it's about a moment. It's about having a moment where a connection is made. For Governor Rubio, that happened last debate. For Senator Cruz, that happened when he turned the cards on the moderator last debate. Can that happen? Will there be an opportunity for Governor Kasich to make a connection with voters in a way that matters? Will there be an opportunity for Governor Bush? He's been in the news a lot. There's a lot of news about his super PAC today. Will that come up in the debate tonight? Will that be an opportunity for him to set the record straight? Will that be an opportunity for him to say something that resonates?
Yeah. What's going on?
Well, as important as these are, these events, there are rooms all across New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina and in Florida where 150, 200 people a time are taking a look at these candidates one-on-one, not screened through some other prism, and they're making their minds up. And I would say that the Portsmouth Rotary in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, is as important as what happens here tonight.
I'd argue more important. Iowa and New Hampshire have always had one thing in common, and that's a late-breaking time. This is one of the most outlier campaigns I've ever seen. I think Iowa and New Hampshire will fill us with surprises that we can't even begin to venture today.
Yeah, okay. Big night tonight for your two candidates, so good luck to you. Enjoy watching Mr. Unaffiliated.
Pressure's off.
Yeah. And Al Cardenas supporting Jeb Bush, Tom supporting John Kasich, and Brad Daystream supporting the American people. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Mark.
it. Enjoy the show. All right, when we come back, we'll have our live interview with the new Speaker of the House, our conversation with Paul Ryan from here in Wisconsin, right after this. Every performance needs its reluctant hero, be it a Greek king of Ithaca, a pilot of the Millennium Falcon, or a congressman from the humble 1st District of Wisconsin. Joining us now, Paul Ryan, a man we've spoken to a couple times in the past, but never since he became Speaker of the House. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a big job.
I don't think I've ever heard my name mentioned in the same sentence as pilot of the Millennium Falcon before. So
I got to ask,
it's a first.
Are you looking forward to Star Wars?
I am, actually. I'm a big fan. I grew up, like that.
Yeah. So I want to cover a lot of policy stuff with you. First with Guantanamo Bay. The co-equal branch has spoken yet again and said Guantanamo should not be closed. Those prisoners should not be moved to the United States. The administration is being a little bit vague about whether the president might use executive action. You've been critical of him, of using executive action on immigration and some other things. What is your message to the president and the White House, the administration, about whether they should use executive action?
He can't. He doesn't have the authority to do it. It's just that clear. Look, we passed the bill in the House at 390 votes, well over enough to override a veto. The Senate today passed this bill with 91 votes, well over what is necessary to override a veto. And language is very clear that he can't transfer the prisoners. And this is language that was put in the defense bill by Democrats when they ran Congress in the early part of the Obama administration.
So what would you say? The president said, Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to fulfill a campaign promise. I promised to close it.
The law is the law. It's just that clear.
Okay. You have talked a lot about the importance of policy, even before you became Speaker, but you said we got to stop worrying about tactics and strategy and talk and be a party of policy. We cannot run on vague platitudes. So I want to ask you about some specifics and start with something you've worked on at Ways and Means in your career, tax reform. I know you want to lower rates, both corporate and individual, but what are the other big elements of whatever we have tax reform that you'd like to see if there's a Republican president, Republican Congress? What are the big elements of Paul Ryan tax reform?
That's what, well, it can't just be Paul Ryan tax reform. It has to be Republican tax reform by the Republican Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. My good friend Orrin Hatch is going to be working on something. The new chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Kevin Brady, is going to be working on a plan. But I do believe that we owe it to the country to show them what it looks like, not just something vague, which is we want everybody to have lower tax rates. I believe we need to show the country what a new tax code looks like. Do I have the answer of what that looks like right now? No, I have my own opinions.
Well, let me hear some of your opinions about deductions, about other elements of things you'd like to see.
A couple of things. I think we're getting to consensus on how to reform our international tax code to get to a system that is like the rest of the world so that you can bring money back from overseas without paying a big penalty. I think we have consensus.
You want to do that only as part of a comprehensive reform?
No, if we could get that done earlier, I think that would be a good idea. I would love to see that done in 2016. I was working on that while I was chair, and I still think that that's something that's in the cards, particularly given the big trend of inversions that we see happening and corporate takeovers. But what does tax reform look like? It means lower rates, broader base. That means fewer loopholes and deductions. And in Congress, we need to work together to forge consensus on exactly what that looks like and how we do that.
So where are you now on some of the big deductions? Charitable, home mortgage? Where are you on those two?
I'm not going to get into those details because I don't want to get...
But you said specificity matters.
I don't want to get ahead of the rest of my colleagues. I want us to form a consensus on how to do this. But am I going to sound like this in a year? No. I want us to show the country what a new tax system looks like. That's pro-growth, that helps get people out of poverty, that creates more jobs, faster economic growth, makes small businesses more competitive with the rest of the world, and how we accomplish that.
Are you open to eliminating those deductions or scaling them back?
I think everything should be on the table.
Flat tax on the table,
I've always been a flat tax guy. Everybody knows that.
That's your preference.
That's what I've always been a preference. Ever since my days as a young Ways and Means guy, that has been my preference. But again, we need to have consensus in our party and put something out there, and that's what I plan on leading.
One reason some citizens are distrustful of the tax code is they think special interests get a lot of breaks, right? Where is Paul Ryan currently on the question of, do special interest lobbyists have too much influence in Washington? What should be done about it?
Yeah, I think they do.
What should be done about it?
I think the Ex-Im Bank was an example of too much influence, and we should have gotten rid of it, and we didn't. That was...
But what about just the day-to-day, big corporations, unions have powerful lobbyists who get appointments with important members and get influence on legislation?
Sure.
What should be done about that?
Here's what happens right now. People pay their taxes at higher rates than we should have because we have so many loopholes and interest group-driven loopholes in the code. And so what happens is people send their money to Washington, and then Washington will let you keep some more of your money if you do what they approve of. That is what we have to get rid of. That, to me, is what special interests have put in the tax code. And by getting rid of loopholes, you are able to lower tax rates for everybody across the board. So people keep their money in the first place, and they decide what they want to do with their money.
So changing the tax code would go a long way towards limiting.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to see done to limit the influence of lobbyists?
Let me say it this way. One of the best ways at going after crony capitalism, at going after influence peddling in Washington, is to restart the tax system, clean up the tax code, reduce the power of the IRS, and let people keep more of their own hard-earned dollars and let them decide what they want to do with it instead of running through some deduction in Washington.
I'll ask you one more time. Anything else you want to do to limit the influence of lobbyists besides the tax, changing the tax?
Yeah, shrink government. I mean, look, so long as you have so much money and power concentrated in the federal government, you're going to have money and power trying to influence that. Okay. So by limiting government and returning it back to the people and the states, respectively, to the states and the people, I think you're actually doing a lot to reduce influence in Washington.
Back when you were working with Jack Kemp and Bill Bennett, the conservative movement had a really high priority, the voucher movement, allowing parents to take money away from public schools that are failing, move them parochial schools, private schools to try to bring competition. Where is the voucher movement now in the conservative movement?
We are sitting here in the middle of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, proof of concept, which is the school voucher movement has done extremely well, helping poor parents send their kids to better schools. Now, as a Speaker of the House, there's an important issue here, which is should the federal government do this? I don't think that that's the role for the federal government. Do I think that this is the role for the state governments and local governments? Absolutely. So am I a passionate believer in school choice and school vouchers? Absolutely. But I think you have to respect the different roles of government that the federal versus state and local have. And so putting that into that context, it's very important, I think, that we do advocate for school choice.
You have tried valiantly to stay out of the presidential race.
And I'm going to continue doing so throughout this interview.
But I'm going to ask you about a policy thing. You have some candidates saying, in your party saying Social Security and Medicare, they're fine. If anything, there should be more money in them. They don't need reform. You have long advocated fundamental reform of the entitlement systems. That debate within your party, what do you say to the candidates who say Social Security, Medicare, they don't need reform?
Math is math. It doesn't lie. And if we do nothing, then we're complicit with the bankruptcy of these programs. Look, this isn't a Republican or Democrat thing. This is a math thing. When you have a pay-as-you-go system where we're going from 40 million retirees to about 77 million retirees and fewer people following them into the workforce, these programs are going bankrupt. And so you have to fix these programs in order to preserve these programs. And if you do it soon, act now, you can make sure that no change occurs to anybody in or near retirement, but for that those of us in the younger generation have new programs that are solvent, that are there for us when we retire, that we can actually count on. Right now, the status quo is that these programs go bankrupt. Our generation doesn't get the benefits being promised, but we also pull the rug out from under seniors after they've retired if we do nothing.
So what's your message to your party's candidates, your party's presidential candidates
with the American people and the taxpayers about what's happening with these programs and how we need to act to shore them up so that the promise that people organize their lives around, who are already in or near retirement, can be kept if you reform these programs going forward. So I'm not going to pick among what candidate says this or that. I'm just going to look at the math. Look at the actuaries. Look at the trustees of Medicare and Social Security who are telling us these really valuable programs are going bankrupt, and we better do something about it so that we do not renege on the promise that has been made to our seniors.
You meet people in Janesville who are supporters of Dr. Carson and Mr. Trump?
Sure.
Sure. If they ask you and say, is it okay for us to support someone, is it smart to support someone with no government experience, what do you say?
No one's ever asked me that question. I always tell people, go with who your gut is, where your heart tells you to go. Look, we have a great field of candidates. And what I think is happening right now is the action is on our side of the aisle. I think most observers, you're the best of them all. I shouldn't have said that to the other networks, but you're the guy who knows this.
You got to say what you think.
Yeah, so I think the Democrat field is pretty well set. Yeah. Okay, once Joe didn't run, it looks like Hillary's got it. Our field is far from set.
But are you indifferent between someone who's never held elective office? They're equally qualified.
I'm neutral on this race.
But I'm neutral on the race. But just on that point, leave the field aside. Is it perfectly sensible to think that the party, someone who's never held elective office, could have their first elective office be president?
Sure, absolutely. There are lots of different kinds of experiences a person can bring to the table to show leadership. You don't have to be elected in government as a governor or senator or a congressman to be an excellent president. So, yeah, I think that's exactly right. But the point I would make is I think the action's on the Republican side of the aisle. I think the energy is on our side of the aisle, and we have great candidates putting ideas out there. I love the fact that our candidates are putting out what they're going to replace Obamacare with, what their tax reform plan is, specifics, ideas, solutions. That's great to see. That's where the action is, and that's what's happening in our party.
Tell me a specific idea Dr. Carson's put forward that you like.
Well, I'm not going to get into all these. I'm not going to get into nitpicking.
Can you name one? I'm not asking nitpicks. I'm asking to name one you like.
I saw him the other day talking about the flat tax. I thought it sounded pretty interesting. So I think all of these candidates have something to offer, but I'm not going to weigh into who's better on what.
Well, I didn't ask you to weigh in who's better. I asked you to
you're leading me down that path.
I was trying, but we're running out of time, so I'm going to have to move on. Last question. You didn't want this job. You've been in it now a couple of weeks. How's it going?
It's going great. Look, once you make a commitment, you stick with your commitment. So the way I look at it is if I'm in for a dime, I'm in for a dollar. And I'm taking it with gusto, full steam ahead. And I did it under the circumstances and conditions that I thought make it successful. I'm doing it differently than the way John Boehner did it, than it was done. I've redesigned the position to a way that I think it makes it a better fit for me and for our Republican conference.
You know what they're calling you here in Wisconsin?
What's that?
Speaker for life, Paul Ryan. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Really good to see you.
You bet.
Appreciate it. All right, coming up, we'll talk to Marco Rubio's man here in Wisconsin right after this.
It's It's a big night for Marco Rubio, and one big fan who will be rooting for him is here with us now, Congressman Sean Duffy from the 7th District of Wisconsin. Welcome to you.
Hey, thanks, Campbell. Good to be here.
So how you feeling? A lot of momentum around your guy, a lot of talk about him right now.
It is, and I think what's nice with Marco Rubio is when he does a debate, he's so articulate. When people go after him, when he gets tough questions, he's able to knock it out of the park. So usually debates means a rise in the polls for Marco because he touches the hearts of the American people and the conservative voter who's looking for someone who has great ideas but can articulate them in a way that resonates with them. So I'm looking forward to the debate.
When you look at him, you see a leader and someone who's ready to be president. A lot of people look at him and say, you know what, great future leader, but still too young. What is the right way to combat that?
See, I don't know that that's actually the case. I think people look at how qualified are the guys on the stage. How well can they articulate policy? So if you're talking about foreign policy, if you're talking about what's happening with Russia and ISIS, Iran, I mean, Marco's probably the most articulate guy on the stage on foreign policy, talking about the American dream. So when you look at a leader, you don't look at how much gray hair they have, like I'm starting to get here. You look at exactly. Well, you look at someone who can drive a message, who can talk about the big idea, and Marco does that, I think, better than anybody. So, and you know, listen, great leaders build great teams. They put people around them who are smart on issues that they need help on, and they're able to listen to good advisors, and I think Marco will do that. And I think, listen, Barack Obama has done that on the left and taken the country center left very effectively. I think he can do that again on the right. Reagan did it, Bush did it.
But just to push you on that a little bit, because he's extremely good at articulating what's happening in the world, to your point. Very charismatic, very good at painting the picture for us. But when it comes to making the actual decisions, I think to Mark's point, there's some who raise the issue about stature and just the experience that comes with time. And he hasn't had that time, as knowledgeable and talented as he may be.
But again, if you go to decisions, like you just said, in stature and decisions, I mean, if you look at the history of Hillary Clinton, I mean, someone who has been in the White House as the First Lady, who's been there she's been there as a senator, and she's been in Washington in the State Department. Look, she's made some really bad decisions. When you ask actually her supporters, what are the great things that Hillary Clinton did in the Senate or as Secretary of State, there's not much to talk about. Or they talk about what happened with Benghazi and the kind of responsibility that she took, the poor decisions in regard to the emails. They talk about, you know, people lobbying the federal government and then her taking money through the Clinton Foundation. I mean, a lot of really bad decisions. Yeah. Bernie Sanders as a socialist, bad economic policy that doesn't help the middle class. So when we're talking about policy and gravitas, we do talk about ideas and who has the right ideas to lead the country forward at this time in our history.
Senator Rubio has not emphasized congressional endorsements in this race. You're one of the people got on early.
Because they mean so much.
Exactly. Well, how much chatter is there now in the House amongst your colleagues in the conference about him in the last couple of weeks as he's become the hot candidate?
I think there's more and more House and Senate members who are getting excited about Marco. A lot of them have hung back somewhat, but there's a real youth movement in the House and the Senate. A lot of men and women who are in their late to mid 30s to early 40s, mid 40s, and they see a Marco Rubio who's a Gen X guy who has been brought up with the same TV shows, the same values that we all were brought up with, and he resonates with them. And they look at some of the older members on the Democrat side, and they look at Marco and go, "This is the fresh face that the Republican Party needs." I know you just had Paul Ryan on, a 44, 45-year-old Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
So that's that kind of exciting youth movement that we have that I think has rallied a lot of the members of the House and the Senate around.
Congressman, thank you.
Hey, Mark,
thanks for hosting us here in Wisconsin. Appreciate it. Congressman
Okay.
Sean Duffy of the Badger State. More from Milwaukee. Synchronize your watches now. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Joining me now at the Milwaukee Theater, members of our star Bloomberg Politics campaign reporting team, Mike Bender, who covers Jeb Bush, Sahil Kapoor, who covers Marco Rubio, and John McCormick, who covers the world, including Iowa. Mike, you had a story this morning on BloombergPolitics.com about Jeb Bush and this notion that he's got a robust ground game and operation and infrastructure in the states that vote after the first four. What did you find?
Well, we pressure tested his argument here that he is the candidate built to last once the primary hits March. Obviously, there's the Iowa
New Hampshire, South Carolina. When it hits March, it's the most frenetic, significant stretch of the debate calendar or the primary calendar. Bush says he's the one building a presidential campaign in those states. We found out that it's not quite the case. Like his campaign in early states, it tends to be top heavy. He's got a lot of endorsements, but the poor performances in the debate so far, his troubles on the stump, are hurting him in these March states as well when it comes to recruiting delegates, getting people excited to start making contacts with voters.
So the tale of the two Floridians, as Bush has been struggling, Rubio's stock has gone up. What can you tell us sort of around tactile feel about how things are different in Marco Rubio's world now?
There's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of energy from the fact that their crowds are getting bigger, they're rising in the polls, and the fact that Jeb Bush is sinking is not something that they deliberately tried to do. They didn't go after him. They didn't try to go negative. What they're trying to do is take advantage of the moment. Marco Rubio is being attacked from all sides right now. He's being attacked by many of his rivals, including Donald Trump, who's sharpening his elbows. Jeb Bush, his super PAC, kind of telegraphed an attack. Even Chris Christie and Rand Paul are going after him right now, not to mention the Democrats and Hillary Clinton's allies who are very nervous about him. So he's trying to keep his head down. He's trying to emerge from this era free like he has so far. And I think the next 2 weeks will be very critical.
John, you got to see them both side by side or sequentially yesterday, and that's always a great thing for a reporter. Tell us a tale of those two campaigns and two candidates in terms of their mood, their performance, the crowd reaction.
Yeah, they were out in Waukesha County west of here, and Rubio had a good-sized crowd for sort of a mid-afternoon.
Good size means what?
300 people, in Wisconsin, where there hasn't been a lot of campaign activity. He gave sort of his standard stump speech. About 10 miles away, Jeb Bush appeared, about 90 minutes later. And it was a school event. They were different in sort of design, but there just was not as much energy at the Bush event. He was there with Scott Walker, who seemed to be like one of the happier guys in the room. I think he's not happy that he's outside of the presidential race at this point, but he seemed to be having fun and sort of trying to get back into the national conversation a little bit.
Right. We talked earlier with some guests about the fact that Rubio has not been a great grassroots fundraiser. He's not raising a lot of small donations the way Carson is, the way Cruz is, and Bush obviously hasn't been either. Do either of those campaigns aspire to ramp that up?
I think Rubio, in the long run, I think he feels like he has to. I think he feels like he probably could. The critical number for him is his favorability, unfavorability ratings. His favorability ratings keep rising, unlike Jeb Bush. So he has a lot of room to grow. He is not generating anything like the Barack Obama level enthusiasm on the grassroots that Obama did in 2008. And if Rubio wants to be a candidate who inspires the base in the same way and is as formidable a general election candidate, that's something that I think he does aspire to. Whether he can do it remains to be seen.
Bush sloughs off the notion that he might get out of the race. Are there people around him who have it in their mind that it may be better to get out and not face the voters next year?
No one close to Bush is telling him to get out. Tonight's a big debate, obviously, for him. They've got the money to keep going. Short of a disaster tonight, I think he can keep sloughing off the suggestions that he has to get out. But there's a lot at stake for him tonight, I think maybe more than anyone.
Widely circulated CNN piece about what Rubio is building in Iowa, and they found not much. Does he have an infrastructure there? Is there time to build one if he doesn't? And can he win or be the top establishment finisher there without really having spent time on the ground and building anything?
Yeah, I think for Rubio, a third-place finish in Iowa could be pretty good. I mean, if he comes out as the establishment candidate there. But you're right, he doesn't seem to have a lot of infrastructure there the way that Carson does, even the way that Donald Trump does. Those two guys really are building things out in Iowa. They have volunteer networks in place. They're making calls every night.
Lots of calls.
They're going to churches. They're doing the things that you need to do. And while the next debate isn't for another 35 days, I mean, that's why this is such an important thing for Bush, because this narrative is going to be sort of locked in place, and it's going to be harder for Bush to change the dynamics. We're going to run into Christmas and the holidays. And as people in Iowa say, I've talked to some Republican leaders there recently, and said they just think it's going to be a fourth quarter game. It's really going to come down to January. And there could be a lot of movement in January, and this thing will get settled, at least in Iowa then.
Yeah, January is not that far away. Not that far away.
Playing for New Hampshire. I will say I was with him last week in New Hampshire at one event, his last event. He said at least 3 times, "I will be back, and I will be back a lot."
Yeah. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Enjoy the debate tonight. Get a brat and a brew. Charge it to me. All right. Thanks to all of you watching at home. You can also have fun watching the debate. You can follow my Twitter feed I don't put a lot of reporting on there during debate, just my best jokes. And, of course, go to BloombergPolitics.com. You'll see a wrap-up from my colleagues and my report cards on the performances of the campaigns. Thanks to Campbell Brown for joining us. We appreciate you watching. We'll be back tomorrow night from Gotham City with a full roundup of the debate and all the political news. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Sayonara.